Kapla!
Got out of tune right as we went live.
Welcome back to Star Trek Nitpickers.
Welcome to Star Trek Nitpickers.
Welcome.
I'm Soma the Traveler.
And I'm Lieutenant William.
This is Lieutenant William.
Hey, thanks.
He can introduce himself, but we're all here together to learn about the Star Trek universe. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're kind of inspired by the Shakespeare play A Comedy of Errors that we just saw because our good friend John Paul, who plays Captain Haskins, was just in A Comedy of Errors. So the whole thing in that play is these two people happen to look alike. It turns out they're twin brothers, but separated at birth. And so we're going to be looking at evil twins in Star Trek. And, we're going to branch out a little bit. We're going to look at Thomas Riker, who wasn't really evil, but maybe he ended up being sort of a bad guy.
Yeah.
Maybe not, depending on how you look at it, depending on what your opinion is.
So I think let's back up just a little bit, because for me that part of that observation is a little ahead of the curve. So I want to spell it out for them a little bit more. Not that time is real or anything, but I'm gonna spell it out just a little bit more.
Please, yeah.
Because we were there at this show, noticing how uproariously funny this play still is. And I'm still finding myself hanging on every line, like, oh my God, he's gonna ask him about that thing because he doesn't know, because it's actually not the guy he thinks it is. It's a different guy. Oh my God, it's hilarious.
It's a comedy of errors.
It's a comedy of errors, and it's still funny. So much humor is dependent on its time, right? So, but this remains funny, and I think it's because we really still use this trope all the time, especially in science fiction, which is why do you look like the person I know? But you don't know anything they know. You're not talking about the same thing. You don't remember our conversation.
You're not them. Yeah.
And now in Shakespeare's time, the only real technology they had to set up this let's call it an innovation for a writing innovation. Yeah, a conceptual technology for writing to make this happen was twins separated at birth, and that's what this play is about. And it's no spoilers, because the first speech in the movie. In the play is telling you this, that the speaker is saying, I had kids, and and the wife took one of them and I took the other on different ships, and we got separated.
That twins, no less. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we had twins, and so then and yet they're also their hen servants are also twins separated.
Right. The crazy thing is, when this guy had twins, he found out that there was a poor woman in town who also had twins. So he basically just bought her children to be slaves or servants, whatever, for his rich twin sons. And then
I assume that was a little more normal than it sounds to us.
Well, now. Yeah, it's like we were just talking with John Paul about the play, and there's a scene where his character is going to get rope. Basically, he wants rope, and it's just not really clear why does he want the rope. And it's like, well, he wants it to get even with his family, his wife, who's been keeping him out of his house, even though it's not really him.
Right.
But so it's like, well, what does he want to hang her just for that? And it's like, no, John Paul explained it to us. He wanted to hit her with the end of the rope, which was, everybody knew that's what you did with rope, I guess, back in Shakespeare's day. I don't know. But so this is a great.
That's where rule of thumb came from. You know that?
No.
When you say this is a rule of thumb, because the rule was you're not allowed to hit your wife with a cord that's thicker than your thumb.
Oh, wow. Did not know that. Yeah.
A little dark, but
Well, yeah, it's dark world.
Don't show Q that evidence.
Right. Yeah.
We need to let him know that we've grown.
Win the trial of humanity with that one. But anyways, yeah. If you haven't seen Comedy of Errors, doesn't matter. The idea is just that these twins get separated at birth. They don't really know that the other exists, but they end up in the same town, and each one's family confuses the one for the other, and hilarity ensues. But it's all explained by this guy in the beginning. That's where you were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Branching.
Is their father.
Right.
And so he's the only one who actually witnessed it. So it's actually, brilliant writing that this is the only way that we could experience this information in this order and have the audience
Twins.
has the omniscient perspective. We understand that there are twins. We know what's happening, but that does not make it any less funny. It is still, so we really ride that trope all the way into modern day, particularly science fiction and especially Star Trek. So we've got a lot of situations where there's a look-alike. And
clones. You got
yep.
transporter, duplicates. You've got
that one's really creative.
androids that just
right. And how many? I think Brent Spiner plays more characters than any cast member of any Star Trek. Right?
I'm pretty sure that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brent Spiner, just
mirror universe, alternate timelines. I mean,
okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
And even not to Star Trek, there's a lot of other sci-fi that really takes this same trope. Just how do you not remember this? And it gets deep and emotional sometimes. Anyway, so go on with your example.
Well, so yeah, we've got a lot of interesting people. I also want to talk about Captain Garth, who is in the original series, who is able to make himself look like anybody he wants just by thinking about it. And the way that he can do this, the reason that he can do this is because these sort of mysterious aliens that we never see fixed him, healed him, and gave him the ability to do this sort of accidentally. It's really just explained briefly in the beginning of the episode, but he ends up impersonating Kirk and then Spock as well. And so Kirk is impersonated in this episode, and he's also impersonated in the last ever TOS episode.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's this woman that wants revenge. She basically feels like wronged by him. I guess, it's an interesting episode because it sort of is examining the way, roles were more in the 60s, where it was like, well, a woman's not expected to have much of a career, and men are. And so this woman is mad at Kirk for having a career and everything and leaving her, I guess. I haven't seen it for a while, but anyway, so she is able to turn herself into basically somebody that looks like Kirk and try to take over the ship. This happens to Kirk a lot. It also happens in the last TOS movie, The Undiscovered Country. There's a great scene where this being that is mostly played by David Bowie's wife, Iman, it turns out she's a shapeshifter, and she turns into Kirk, and McCoy can't figure out which one is which is exactly what happens in this TOS episode with Captain Garth, where it's, Spock is like, oh no, which one of them is the real Captain Kirk?
I mean, if I was a producer or a casting director, I would want to see William Shatner looking nefarious a little bit more than Kirk, the character of Kirk, actually allows.
Well, so
he's too honorable. I mean, and now some have written, probably rightfully so, that the early captains had a bit more toxic masculinity. He was definitely a bit macho and a bit of a womanizer at times, which wasn't unusual then. So it was a bit more, it blended into his character.
Reputation as a womanizer is a bit exaggerated. Women threw themselves at him. He was very restrained for the most part. He never really went after women on the show.
Yeah, maybe he's got some Jedi mind tricks.
If he did, it was actually because of some ulterior motive.
Sure.
Now the show did have a lot of.
I didn't want to have sex with her. I did it for the good of the Federation.
I mean, that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah, totally.
Not that it's kind of like James Bond. It doesn't mean he can't enjoy it.
Yeah. But because we have better writing technology let's call it idea technology than Shakespeare did. We can make this happen, this experience, this mindfuck experience happen in very imaginative ways. And that one is particularly interesting. And it gives the actors a chance to explore a different character completely in the same context of the same show.
Yeah, there's also the TOS episode where Kirk gets split in half. So there's basically the evil Kirk and the good Kirk, and they don't even realize it for a while. But the whole episode is basically pointing out that you need both. It's not really like evil and good, but sort of like strong and aggressive versus contemplative and sort of, oversensitive or something.
Inward.
Yeah.
Outward and inward.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde.
But the idea is that you need to be integrated to be a whole and to get things done and to make decisions and be an effective captain. Hey, everybody, please do leave us a comment. We got our first comment. Spock, Jewish inside to you. Yeah. Yep, yes. It is from his temple. That's where Leonard Nimoy got it from. Mm-hmm. Leonard Nimoy contributed a lot to Mr. Spock, including the Vulcan neck pinch, which I wanted to say, when Captain Garth turns into Spock in that episode, he gives somebody the Vulcan neck pinch, and it's like, how did he learn how to do that? Part of the thing they're doing in that episode is fooling the audience into thinking, that this really is Spock. So that when you find out it's not, it's like, But it's a little bit of, an oversight, I guess, something to nitpick that Captain Garth can do the Vulcan neck pinch. Now, I know.
Kirk learned how to do it, too.
No, he tried. There's a line where Spock's,
that's right.
Kirk says, I wish I could do that. And Spock is like, I've
tried to teach you.
Whatever, yeah.
Is there no one else who's been able to do it?
Picard learns how to do it. Picard can do it. Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and actually, would you permit, Lieutenant, a Rick and Morty tangent? Because there's a cool parallel in a Rick and Morty episode.
Oh boy. All right. Yeah. Let's
all right. I'll make it short. I'll make it short. They go to a detox at an alien spa, and because they're both so under pressure and just so stressed out and doing these intensely high pressure things all the time, they said the intro is, we need a vacation. They come from this really harrowing adventure and they both just break down crying and they're like, we need a vacation. And they go to a spa and they go through a detox machine that takes out your emotional toxins.
Okay.
And they both have so many emotional toxins that their toxins are conscious. And they get sucked out of them and put into a little container, but they start fighting to get out, and they get out. And so and meanwhile, Rick and Morty are the most kind people, more kind than you could ever imagine them being.
All relaxed.
And Rick is apologizing and farting and saying, excuse me. And Morty is like secure and giving everybody life advice. And then he then he moves to New York and becomes a stockbroker. And but it's similar though, because the idea is that there's these two parts of us, but they both look the same. And so at one point, when the good Rick and the evil Rick, the toxic Rick, are fighting each other, the daughter walks in and goes, "Dads." And so it's a sort of version of that trope. More.
But Rick's not her dad. Wait, what?
Beth. Yeah.
Oh, Beth.
Yeah.
Oh, Beth. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Yeah.
But she says dads.
Okay.
And of course, but also she's also partly not even really caring what the explanation is, because she's just so used to this kind of shit from him.
Show, yeah.
So, and of course, one of them is naked, or maybe both of them are naked. I can't remember.
I do remember Morty becoming a stockbroker and moving away, and he gets like a beautiful wife, right? But there's that another episode. Anyways, we're not here to talk about Rick and Morty, all right?
All right, sounds like a good time for a comment. Didn't Data do the neck pinch once? I think you're right about that, Andy Lim.
Jeez, yeah.
That sounds familiar.
That sounds right. But
that sounds familiar. And of course, he would be able to learn it, because at least on a technical level.
You would think.
Right?
Yeah. What else we got there?
Sophie Green is deployed in Israel.
Hey, Sophie Green, how are you?
And this is hilarious. I'm watching Star Trek Geeks from America. Thank you for your service, Sophie Green, and thank you for your comment. We are very happy to have you here, and happy to entertain.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about this whole streaming thing is, we're here in New York City right now, but, we probably don't have anybody in New York City watching right now. We did tell some of our friends, but, they've all got other streams to watch and stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
We almost had Captain Haskins here as a guest. We're going to get some guests on this show. We've got a lot of people lined up, and it's going to be fun. But yeah, Captain Haskins, John Paul, was almost here. We were just hanging out with him. And we have some exciting news. We're going to film a bunch more Captain Haskins stuff on the 29th. So maybe we'll even live stream some of that just so you guys can see what the process is like.
Yeah, that's a fun one to share, the filmmaking process. Andy is in NYC. We are in Brooklyn.
Hug Sophie. Yeah. Welcome. And we hope that everybody is well wherever they are. And, we know these are trying times, but that's kind of part of why we're trying to, give a little something back to the community and everything. And, honestly, guys, we're hoping that we can make some friends here and we can all kind of have a mutually beneficial thing going on with this stream, which we're trying to do every other Sunday. But, it might end up being more like every Sunday, or we miss a Sunday here and there because things are topsy-turvy. But
if whatever we know, we'll share with you. If we actually plan ahead, we'll tell you. So usually every other Sunday, but this time we just thought we'd jump the gun.
Yeah. So looks like Andy Lim, Queens here. All right. Yeah. So we got Queens going on. Queen's in the house.
And Sophie's mom is from Brooklyn Heights. So, all right, we're...
all right, cool, yeah.
All roads lead to New York.
Yeah, it's the capital of the world sometimes, I think. But
I certainly feel that way in terms of the Federation. It's like, I feel like they don't say as much about New York on Star Trek as I think they would.
No, they really don't,
More San Francisco.
Yeah, there's a ton of California, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely always been the California conceit, is that we are the future. So I kind of wonder if maybe there's a bias there.
Well, Rodenberry was probably trying to pitch it to people like, hey, yeah, like this is the place.
That makes it look hip. That's true, right? It makes it appealing.
But I mean, he lived in California, so it makes sense that he would think from a California point of view. Mm-hmm. He wasn't from California, though. I forget where he was from. Mm. But Roddenberry's an interesting guy. I was going to tell a Roddenberry story, and then we were like, let's start the stream and then tell the Roddenberry story.
Oh, that's right. You stopped yourself.
But anyways, let's talk about the twins, since that's what we're supposed to be talking about.
All right.
So Thomas Riker. Mm-hmm. Another really interesting person who, you could not be held accountable for mistaking him for Will Riker. But Thomas Riker is not at all Will Riker.
Even, and I learned this recently, on Deep Space Nine, he shows up as Will Riker on all sensor tests, all DNA and sensor tests, medical tests.
Wow, you would think that they would do something about that before.
Right? Surely, surely they can find some way to figure out which one is which. But they, on Deep Space Nine, he shows up and is very able to pose as Will Riker, even though he's got nefarious purposes being there, and without being detected, even submitting to medical tests, because they're like, we have Will Riker samples and his are the same,
Yeah, well, Deep Space Nine is another thing that I want to talk about, where they have that early episode where we find out that somebody killed a clone of themselves so that they could frame somebody else. I think it's Odo, for murder.
Yes,
that was an interesting episode.
Yes.
Sophie Green, there was a famous one written by Harlan Ellison about New York City, but they went through the script like you wanted. It was called City on the Edge of Forever. Yeah, City on the Edge of Forever. Is that in New York? I forgot about that. But you're saying it's not in New York. Is that what you're saying? Because I don't think it is, but it doesn't stand out to me
Yeah,
where
they
it
wouldn't.
was
They wouldn't do it
exactly.
in the original way. Okay. Yeah, and which show are you talking about?
That's TOS,
Is
the
that the
City on
original?
the
That's
Edge
what
of
I was
Forever.
wondering.
That's one of the most famous TOS episodes
I thought I
where
recognized the
they
name.
end up going back in time and getting trapped in, I guess it's like right after the Great Depression, pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
and they get taken in by this nice woman who runs a shelter, and well, I won't give it away. Yeah, if you haven't seen it. Kapla, everybody, though. Thanks for watching. Let's see another comment here that we might have missed. Yeah, so okay, I guess we got all the comments. But yeah, so Thomas Riker is one of those guys who you want to like, and you probably do like him by the end of the TNG episode. You might not like him by the end of the DS9 episode, but you have to feel sorry for the guy. I mean,
I agree. I wanted you to say that. Keep going. I just
you know,
I just want to chime in on that.
from his point of view, he is the real
Right.
Riker. It's so ridiculous for him to be expected to, just go and be somebody else. But then again, what else can you expect him to do? I mean,
Right. I mean, is there any? If there's no difference between the two of them, then it's arbitrary which one gets to keep the life that they expect, and the other one is just absolutely screwed.
Yeah. I mean, now the thing is, like, he was stuck on that planet, and life went on for the other guy, so you can't undo that.
Right.
You can't
And also,
deny that.
that's true. That's true. So by the time it was detected, there was already a split.
Yeah,
Makes
that's the whole
sense.
thing. Is he had to live in solitude on this planet alone, thinking that everybody was missing him, but they weren't. Let's see. Sophie Green, yes, the original series. It was set in New York City. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's
So they did it that
great.
way. They did have it in New York in the end.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah,
Nice.
that's a pretty great episode. Obviously, one of the most famous ones, and it's really interesting that Harlan Ellison was not happy with the way that they changed it, but all they really did was change it so that Dr. McCoy was not a drug dealer. I mean, he wrote the episode before the show was a show, before it was going. So it makes sense that he wouldn't really have a good grasp on the characters. And as the characters were developed by the series producers and, Roddenberry and everybody, it just wasn't the kind of thing that McCoy would have done. And so it made sense that they changed it. But yeah, Arlen Ellison was not happy with that. He hated people rewriting his stuff, and he was always suing people. He sued like more than anybody or something. I don't know. But he was a great writer, and he was a really original guy, and he fought for writers' rights, which is something that he has to be remembered and respected for, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing after the Rick and Morty thing that I said earlier that was thinking about when you were talking about the Kirk lookalike episode was how many different ways. Maybe it's not the lookalike trope in the sense that the characters don't know who they're talking to, but there is another thing that happens in sci-fi a lot, but that because we can imagine consciousness being separated from the body, or if they have some kind of technology to move you into a different body or something like that, or these aliens who have their physical form want to like possess one of the crew members and they agree, these are examples of using the sci-fi tool to let an actor explore a different character.
Right.
Like on Discovery, there was an interesting.
I was going to say, they do that a lot on Discovery.
Yeah, where's the doctor agreed. It's actually one of my favorite lines where he's agreed to have one of these old scientists who hid this technology away that they're searching for. Agreed to let him take it, inhabit his body, so that he could lead them to this clue. And as they're embarking, he goes, "Oh, this guy works out." That's one of the cooler things. You couldn't say that in almost any other situation unless you had written that. This is somebody who has not been in physical form in a long time, trying out a body. And so how do you get an actor to portray that. You know, you have to be an interesting actor to be like, whoa, okay,
Well,
this guy works out.
So yeah, that reminds me of The Host, where Riker has to have the symbiont put in him, and I thought Frakes did a great job being somebody else in that episode, because you'd think it'd be hard to accept him as another person, another character, but he really did a good job. Anyways, we got some comments here. You want to take them?
Oh, sure.
Soma.
Sophie only watched the original series 4 years ago. Oh, cool. Yeah. I also watched it about 4 years ago when it was about to be taken off of Netflix. So I watched it really fast, which means I didn't retain as much of it as I wanted to. But that was before I got Paramount Plus. So that's now I've been going through everything else. That's sort of getting a better impression of TOS is sort of next on the list.
Well, the thing about watching TOS on Paramount Plus, as I was telling you,
that's right.
It's remastered. So you have to, some people like it, some people don't. But the scenes where they show the Enterprise or any starships or anything in space, they basically just edited out the models that were shot in the 60s for the show, and they put in CGI versions of the same stuff. But they changed a fair amount. Like if they talk about some ship, but they never actually showed it in the original series because of they didn't have the money, the budget, the time. Now they put the ship in, but it's like, well, who I don't know who designed that ship, and like maybe they even did get the designs that were going to be used from the 60s. But if you ask me, it's still just like, this isn't the real Star Trek. This is like Star Wars after Lucas has messed with it 25 times.
Yeah.
So but anyways, go ahead and watch it. It's still Star Trek. It's still pretty cool.
And like we were talking about last time, they were really showing that off in Farpoint Station because it was a new show, and it was called The Next Generation. So it had the idea that there's going to be new stuff you've never seen before built into the concept of the show. So I think they used the new special effects technology to their advantage, because they already had done that in the movies a little bit. But then when Next Generation came on, they were like, "Yeah, let's make this look a little bit more like it's really happening."
Yeah, they did a great job
too. We know how to do that now.
You want to take a?
Yeah, sure.
Sophie.
Andy Ellison wrote a fair few B5 episodes, I think. Can you speak to that?
I'm not sure. A few.
Because I don't know as much about Harlan.
Fair few B5 episodes. I'm not sure what you mean by B5. Is that Babylon 5? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that he wrote any Babylon 5.
Neat.
He's a really interesting character. He was really famous for being a writer. That's why they really wanted to keep his name on The City on the Edge of Forever, even though I think he asked them to take it off, because they did rewrite it. And, Rodenberry was famous for rewriting stuff. But anyways, before we go on too long, I want to say we should talk about the most famous evil twin in Star Trek.
All right.
You want to say it?
Oh, yeah. Of course, the one who's easy to imagine is replicated because he is a synthetic to begin with. Lieutenant Commander Data.
Well, he's not the evil one, obviously.
But it's easy to imagine that he's been replicated. That's right, Andy Lim. Lore, which I love, and apparently, when I said this last week, this hadn't occurred to you. But Data and lore. Data is objective information stripped of any emotion.
Fact.
Lore is pure hearsay. It's something you only
Mythology.
heard, subjective, completely fallible information.
Rumor,
exactly. And that's evolved over time. It's like a game of telephone. So Data and Lore, what a brilliant set of names for
I just never really thought about that. I never put it together. But so Lore is obviously the epitome of an evil twin in Star Trek. And the episode where Lore switches places with Data and renders Data unconscious, that is more like a comedy of errors than any other evil twin that you find on Star Trek, I'd say.
And especially when Sung tries to give him the updated emotions chip.
Well, that's the next episode.
Yes, right.
But go on.
I just love that as a because that is truly an error. What is he? He recites a little poem about how Sung.
Yeah,
A broken heart is with the broken heart can't even tell his own boys apart.
Oh yeah.
and that's how he reveals that he's Lore.
Right.
But if you're watching, if you know the character well, you know immediately because he smirks, and that is not something that ever happens as Data. Right. And because Brent Spiner is like, all right, this is this complete character shift. Like whenever he has an agenda in his eyes, that's only from Lore. And then of course, but then when Data gets the emotion chip in which one is it? First Contact,
Generations. Yeah.
He has, you can see the character shift there, but it's not the same character. Lore is for some reason angrier, sure. and Data, when he gets emotions, is more scared.
Well, I mean, he starts out having that like. He's like manic, you know, and he's just like laughing uncontrollably at the stupid joke.
Right.
Oh yeah, and somebody pointed out.
That was 7 years ago.
I put out a short of that interaction where Data tells the joke about the Ferengi, and you know he's laughing at it, and he tells Geordi why he's laughing, and Geordi's like, "Yeah, that was 7 years ago at Farpoint mission." And somebody commented, but. They didn't know the Ferengi when they did the mission to Farpoint. They hadn't met them yet. So, but if you watch the episode, remember, they talk about the Ferengi in Encounter at Farpoint. Groppler Zorn says, look, if you guys don't want this station, maybe we'll just do business with the Ferengi. And Picard's like, yeah, well, you know, I hope they find you as tasty as they found their last associates. So they already knew about the Ferengi to make jokes about them. So anyway, nitpicking a nitpicker. What can I do?
Yeah, no, that's what we're here to do. Let's look a little bit a few of these comments. We're getting a lot of them. Thank you.
Peace pseudo history.
Harlan was often unhappy with his with how they. I assume you're saying Susan was nice to have you here. That he was unhappy with how they executed his scripts. Or are you just saying he was unhappy? He had depression issues, heart problems. Yeah. Okay. So health problems maybe contributed to something like that, but an excellent crafter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Artists are often working with a pain. So much pain fuels creativity. In fact, there's a line in Discovery about that. She says, you will do so much with this pain. You will save worlds with it. So maybe that's just what it was like for Ellison.
Yeah.
So Sophie,
I'm no expert on Harlan Ellison. I know a few things about him, basically just because of Star Trek. You know.
Yeah. And I think also writing for Star Trek is definitely a sign that you long for something better. I mean, the marked point of whole story is that they're more enlightened than we are now.
Well, yeah, but to be fair, the show hadn't been established when he wrote for it, and he was just a big science fiction writer who was sought after. So it's not like he, called him up and said, "Can I do an episode?"
Fair enough, yeah. It's also not like the science fiction that came later, where the general trope is, humans invented robots rebelled, and now we're at war, like Battlestar Galactica, But of course, then there's a twist in Battlestar Galactica too, which is not really that much of a spoiler, but I am gonna hold it back because it's a great show to watch. It's pretty timeless.
Okay.
Great quote from that. Maybe it's a hair political. It's about why we separate the police from the military. But we'll skip that out. But
still Star Trek here, an evil twin.
Star Trek,
right? That's
yeah.
what we're talking about.
But also, that's another sci-fi trope, because when you find out who's a Cylon, who's actually a robot, then you suddenly see multiple copies of them. There are hundreds of copies. Wait, this is a person that I know you, and you told me stories about your childhood. Oh God, so that's a much more menacingly evil kind of show. There's a lot more danger.
Well,
because it's a war.
You're kind of reminding me of the Changelings infiltrating.
Yes, I wanted to get to the Changelings. This is my favorite example because it's the most scary. These beings can imitate anybody perfectly, and you have no way of knowing.
They can become
unless you ask the
your
right
evil
questions.
twin, at the drop of a hat. And they did that a number of times in Deep Space Nine. And, it was a lot of fun. I think it was really well done in Deep Space Nine. And when they brought them back in Picard, they changed them a lot. And, it just wasn't really as well done. It wasn't as consistent with itself. I mean,
since we didn't really talk to them much at all, we didn't really hear from them as far as what's their actual agenda.
The one guy early on that Worf and Music are captured, and it's interesting that actor was actually one of Picard's kids in Generations when he's in the Nexus in the Christmas thing. He's a little boy who's like, Papa. Yeah, and it was just random apparently. They didn't figure, it'd be perfect for that. He just auditioned and got it. And it was like, oh, actually, you were that guy. But anyways, yeah, the Changelings are a great enemy, and it's interesting that most of them could imitate people, but Odo couldn't. It's kind of like, but wasn't he the one who was always looking at people? The rest of them, but I guess the idea is right. He just never learned to shapeshift as well as they did because they were in the wild.
And he was very isolated. He didn't have anybody to tell him anything.
Yeah.
Maybe it's simple tricks that just require practice and it never occurred to him or something. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. And then when they make him human, he still looks like Odo, though.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I don't want to.
Yeah. What else do we got here? Sophie, that's what I read in my Star Trek book. Thanks, guys, for confirming it. 90s, when I was born, it was all about the writing of the making of Episode 1 on Emmy Award-winning the written version of it. Nice. Yeah. Cool. Glad we have our history right. But yes, totally. The writing was a big thing. I feel like people are trying these days. The long arc is more the thing, and of course, with aspects of Discovery and Deep Space Nine. I mean, Strange New Worlds. The whole point was to return to that episodic rhythm a little bit, but I feel like it does get away from just that because they really mastered that structure. Like you know when it's time for the conflict to be knocked up a notch, and when it's time for a solution. I mean, you just feel it in your bones, especially if you grew up watching that stuff. That's sort of how you learn that formula.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, since there's so many episodes per season, you just really get the hang of it. You repeat it a lot more times.
Yeah, 26 episodes a
10
season.
episodes per season these days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so we've got some other twins on Star Trek. Let's see. I was thinking, Picard sort of has a twin in the last Next Generation movie. It's a clone, but he's younger, so nobody's actually mistaking him for Picard. Mm-hmm. The idea was that they would eventually use him to, to confuse people into thinking he was Picard, but they abandoned that plan, and so he's played by Tom Hardy, and Tom Hardy had to shave his head, and they kind of retconned Picard a little bit there because they say something about how he lost his hair when he was very young, which is actually the truth for Patrick Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an episode in TNG, Tapestry, where they show Picard when he's young and he has hair. When he's in the academy, he's got a full head of hair. So,
mm-hmm.
It's fun to nitpick little stuff like that. That's why this channel is called Star Trek Nitpicker.
Yep. Let's see. Andy Lim lore. Yep. And
the mirror universe does count pseudo history. Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah, I would say that's actually a really a nice example of using new theories in science to riff in science fiction and explore old storytelling tropes in the science fiction category, because it's even more of a mind-blowing idea to be like, wait, you exist in another universe that's just like mine except blank, and you're here. That's enough. Like, that's just hard enough to swallow. Yeah. But you look just like me, or whatever. My wife can't tell us apart. That was Stargate had one like that once, where someone had to figure out between two which was his real wife.
And so
It was parallel universe.
that's the thing about the TOS episode where they introduce the mirror universe. It really does sort of imply that the people over there are just sort of rotten. They're just like a little bit nastier, a lot nastier than their versions over here. But by the time you get to like Deep Space Nine, they're really kind of saying, you know what, they're just different people and their universe is just different and it led them to be that way. But they're just people, and people are the same all over.
A very compassionate Star Trek philosophical kind of direction to take it.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Now we also have Parallels, which is the episode where Worf is just sort of skipping through universes without being able to stop. And in the end, we have all of these enterprises converge in one section of space-time or whatever, and we get to see all of these different Rikers. It's pretty much like all, I guess there's Picard on a bunch of them, but what stands out the most is there's one where it's like the Borg have totally demolished the Federation, and there's this Riker saying, our Picard's been gone. He died. The Borg got him a long time ago. Please don't send us back, And they're like, we're sorry. You got to go back. We're going to blow up the whole time continuum here. Or whatever. But, the poor guy, he's not evil, but it's another one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's me, but that's not me. So, Riker's got a bunch of these duplicates going around, I guess.
Well, there's something that you said back there a second ago about how there's some limit to how much you can do this jumping around. That's one thing that also science fiction also uses, which let's think about what that accomplishes in the story, because that puts a strong limit on how much time you actually have to be in contact with each other. If it's something like that, if it's someone like they're
it's a very short scene.
Georgiou from the Mirror Universe in Discovery actually experiences lapses in consciousness because she's been away from her actual timeline, her actual universe too long. So it's an interesting thing that ups the tension in the story, because now there's this big bad thing we are trying to avoid that is getting closer and closer and closer with every passing minute. So our time is precious. We have to act fast. All the stuff that that just changes the whole tone of I'm looking at a mirror image of myself or of someone I know.
Oh, I just remembered the Rodenberry story I was going to tell, so I might as well tell it. I guess.
I think it was about Troy and.
Well, it's about why he stopped working on Star Trek back in the '60s when they were still putting out TOS. A lot of people, I guess, don't realize that Rodenberry did not really have much input into the last season of Star Trek. And the reason is because, you see, it almost got canceled after the second season. And then the letter writing campaign saved it. And NBC was like, hey, let's pour some money into this show and let's make the most of it. It seems like people really like it. But then, this is the detail I got to get a little clearer on. For whatever reasons, they decided, basically, they found out that another network was going to put some show, I can't remember what, but something that was going to be big on at the same time they were planning to put Star Trek on. And so they said, you know what, we'll still do the third season, but we're going to put it on Friday nights. And Roddenberry knew that teenagers go out on Friday nights, and if we don't have teenagers watching the show, we're sunk. We're not going to have good ratings, and there's no point in, really, even trying if that's what they're going to do. But that's not why he left. Still, the reason that he ended up leaving was he said, if you move it to Friday, I'll walk. And they still moved it to Friday. And he felt like he couldn't not walk because it would mean that, he wasn't somebody that you had to respect in the film industry.
Shark smells blood.
Yeah. So he walked, and he didn't want to, but that's what ended up happening. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to see if we can catch back up on some of these, because there have been a lot of interesting comments here. Odo was an outcast also. Oh man, we should explore that because he is the exception among the shapeshifters. And it's because he was cast out, but I think for sort of accidental reasons originally. But then he later finds his people and chooses not to join.
It wasn't accidental. They cast him out as like an explorer, basically. It was like, we need to get to know the universe. Let's send out 100 people who are infants.
That's right. So it was against his will. I mean, it was involuntary.
Yeah,
but it was on purpose by his keepers, his people. Sure.
Funny way of doing things, but
let's see. Some of the original effects are better than the CGI effects. Some, I agree.
Say their name when you.
Oh yeah, that's Sophie Green right there. Thank you for that. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's interesting to go back. It's more creative to see those handcrafted things.
Yeah,
miniatures and whatnot.
We're actually planning to start shooting some models ourselves for the Captain Haskins project and having fun. We're not professional, and it's not going to be as good by any means as the original series, even because, let's face it, they had a budget and time, and they were professionals and stuff. But I bought some micro machines from the 90s, the Enterprise D and the Klingon cruiser, and I don't know what else we got. A runabout, I guess we got Deep Space Nine and the Romulan bird of prey, the Borg ship. So I did a little experimenting, putting them in front of some green stuff and shooting them, and yeah, it was working out. So I have to write it into the scripts that we're going to be doing now with Captain Haskins, and
so stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pike on this channel.
Yes, absolutely.
Star Trek nitpickers.
I would like to have some Klingons in this fan fiction stuff we're doing too. So I guess I might as well just say, if people know Klingons in the New York area, people who know how to
taking auditions for Klingons.
Yeah, basically. We're hoping to do
pseudo history is a Viking, so that might be a qualifier. I think that puts you in the top running.
Even real Klingons, it doesn't have to be cosplay. If you know a real Klingon, we'll take them. And also, just if anybody has ideas about how to do the makeup for any of the aliens, because I've been looking into it and it doesn't seem easy. I mean, I never thought that it was, but I thought, well, there must be like some kits available now to do some, okay kind of stuff, but not really. It seems like they used to have kits in the 90s that probably weren't very good, and now you can find stuff on like Etsy, but it's all like one use basically, which is, I guess, the way it is on the professional show a lot of the time, but I don't know. I can't really afford to do too much of that if that's what it comes down to. And I don't know how to do it either, really. But yeah, it's something I want to figure out. It'd be fun to have some real cool, good, well-written fan fiction on this channel.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's we're striving for that all the time.
We're working on it.
And so yeah, I like that as a step. Always pursue all pathways for sure, and stay tuned because we're trying new stuff all the time here, and this man is prolific. Like I'll keep saying it.
Thank you.
So there's always new stuff to check out. Let's see. There's a couple. Oh yeah, Andy Lim. There's a TNG episode with Beverly trapped in a collapsing mini universe where everyone is a duplicate. They keep disappearing. Right. And the ones who she talks to, once she realizes there's people who have disappeared, the other people who are left are like, we've always had a crew of 15 people.
Yeah.
And she's like, what?
That episode's called Remember Me. Yeah.
That was a fantastic one.
If there's nothing wrong with me, then maybe there's something wrong with the universe.
Yeah, that's right. And the gotcha moment is, computer, tell me the nature of the universe.
Right.
The universe is a finite spheroid object. It's just like, okay, now we're getting somewhere.
No evil twins in that episode. I don't think Beverly ever has an evil twin.
There's a moment of it because the people are like, their story is different than her story. What do you mean you've never had a staff in the in the sick bay before. She's like, what?
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's sort of
a medical crew of 1 for a ship with a complement of 1,000.
Yeah. So in a way, Shakespeare is looking at all this. And for those who have tuned in later, we're comparing Shakespeare's comedic portrayal of twins separated at birth, which is still funny today, with sci-fi's treatment of the evil twin trope or the look-alike trope. It might not be comedy, but it's definitely like it creates a story, and but that definitely there are a lot of examples that we're talking about that are they're varied. Like I said earlier, Shakespeare only had one way of making that happen as a writer: twins separated at birth. But now it's almost like we're like, check out how far the technology has come. The writing, the conceptual technology. We can think of all these ways. And this episode, Remember Me, that Andy Lim is talking about, is not exactly the same trope, but it brings about the same, like, what do you do in that situation? And wouldn't that be weird?
It's breakdown of reality, yeah.
That's kind of sci-fi, really. It's like, wouldn't that be weird? What do you think about? What are you then in that case? If you can, if this can happen.
Let's see. I guess most of the characters on TNG don't really have evil twins. I mean, Data obviously does. Picard's got Tom Hardy. What was his name? Anyways. Then
Kirk is not dead. He liveth. Pseudo history. Nice
Kapla. We'll be seeing Kirk again soon, is my feeling, guys. I know nobody really cares, but as I've been saying, as I've been reporting, William Shatner said at a convention that he was in talks with Paramount to return to the role of Captain Kirk. Now, granted, that was a while ago, but
what?
It could happen. It could happen. It wasn't that long ago.
Wow. Okay. He's still got more Kirk in him.
Yeah, for a long time he said he wanted to return, and then at some point, not all that long ago, I think he's like 93 now.
Good God.
He said that he didn't want to do it. He was so sort of disgusted with how they just were not asking him back that he was like, actually, like, I don't even want to do it anymore. But apparently now he's changed his mind again, or turned his
life is short. Why you got to do that with what little time you have left?
Well, yeah, I mean, anyways,
like,
it kind of makes sense though. It's like, why didn't they have him back? They really do kind of.
There's logic to it, but if I was in my 90s, I wouldn't exactly be passing up opportunities.
Well, I don't. I mean, right. Well, he's not. I don't know. I guess it sounds like somebody from Paramount came to him and said, can we talk about this? And he said, yeah. Now it's hard to say what could really be going on because there are only 2 shows that are in development or in production or whatever. 3 shows. You got the Starfleet Academy show, which I guess, that could be the one. They could have him show up on that show somehow, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's like a holographic version of Kirk or something. Like, what if, Captain Kirk got older, and so they do an AI kind of VR program.
Right.
It could be that he's on this show being developed by Tawny Newsome, which is a comedy set on Risa, which doesn't feature the main characters are not Starfleet people. They're waiters at a bar or a restaurant on Risa. So if he turns up in that one, that's in the 25th century. It's like right after the events of Star Trek Picard. That would be really weird, and it might not be very good because it's like a comedy, right? The big question I have is that show going to be half an hour or an hour? Because, just look at the Orville. That show's an hour, and it's really not comedy. It even like toned down the comedy that it had in the later seasons. Well, I mean, hopefully that show comes back. But anyways,
yeah, really,
they say it is. But, so it would be weird if Kirk was on a comedy. A lot of people don't even like the idea of there being a Star Trek comedy show, but it seems like it really is happening.
All of these points you bring up are, I almost want to say concerning. Yeah, they don't fit exactly. It feels a little out of order. I mean, I feel like we just watched the last chapter of Picard's life, so it's odd that Kirk would be coming back.
Well, and then it would make more sense, I guess, for him to be on Strange New Worlds. But
True.
At the same time, that's just like really a weird idea. We already have a different actor playing Kirk on that show, and he doesn't look like William Shatner, but
right.
I mean, whatever. None of that really matters. There could be something else that some writer's trying to get going that just isn't really going, and maybe it will. There's a lot of stuff like that. Like Michael Dorn tried for a long, long time. I don't know, maybe he's still trying to get this Worf show where it would be Worf as the captain of a Klingon vessel. He's left Starfleet, gone back to the Klingon Empire, and he's going around, kicking butt, basically. And Michael Dorn almost got that show to happen like a number of times, but it just didn't really fit into...
Too bad. That would have been great.
It would have been great. I really wish they had just done that instead of like any of this other stuff.
Yeah, and if they were to do it now, they've had that extra chapter of Worf's life where he's like gotten into meditation and stuff, and that's all funny.
They could still do it.
They could still do it, and that would actually make it even more interesting, I think.
But there's no plans. I mean, they just canceled Prodigy. I guess you guys know that. Star Trek Prodigy was on Netflix. Yeah, Netflix had picked it up or whatever, and it seemed like maybe they were gonna, really pick it up and do another season or two or whatever. But that's just been officially dropped from the possibilities. Man, we're hoping
we keep losing them.
We gotta hope somebody else will pick up Prodigy because that could happen. I mean, I don't know, Amazon or Apple TV or. I don't know, anybody, right? Like somebody, come on, let's give us a little more Prodigy. I mean, why doesn't Nickelodeon pick it up? They co-produced it.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. That's a pretty creative idea. There's so much will to get it done, but there's all these red tape hurdles, money stuff, Paramount. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why, putting everything in the responsibility in one person's hands or one entity's hands is risky, because then nothing gets done if it has to be one particular way. If it was a little bit more collective, like science, then maybe it could be reproduced and explored at a greater rate.
It's funny because they say the opposite about art a lot of the time. In general, like too many cooks in the kitchen. Just let the one person do it. Let him have his vision. That's kind of like what they're doing with DC movies now. They're like, just James Gunn is the man, let him do what he wants, and he's in charge, instead of all this infighting about what should really be the story, and everybody just kind of trying to throw some random thing in, thinking, oh, if my random thing is the one that kind of catches on, then I'll get rich and whatever. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But no, you got a point. I mean, I think if William Shatner does return to Kirk, nobody really wants it to be in a comedy.
That I agree. That's one of many things about that just doesn't fit to me.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit time-wise, doesn't fit in terms of the tone. That was the Kirk character shone brightly when he was deep and badass and aggressive and charming and just a little bit macho.
And just really intelligent.
And yeah, right. So
outsmarting people.
Doesn't need to be comedy. That you don't want to lighten that character too much. I mean, he had humor, but that wasn't the point.
No, and so,
I mean, that's a hard one.
If you look at this thing that was done recently, where what was the Rodenberry archive did this thing where Kirk is kind of getting to heaven or something. I'm not sure even really how to describe it, but it was done with the blessing of a lot of the big shots, but it wasn't done by Paramount. I'm being really vague, and I don't have the facts on this, but what I'm saying is the tone was very serious, and people loved that. And I think if they did something like that, or just something that had that kind of a tone, they could be really successful with bringing Kirk back. But yeah, there's just no way to know if they would be able to do it right. We all know about Section 31, and if they did something like that with Kirk in it, with William Shatner, it would really that would upset a lot of people. So
I mean, I'm gonna just have to give them a little benefit of the doubt here, because although it's, you know, subpar work, we're talking about the weaker moments of Star Trek work. That, first of all, that every artist has those, and nothing that's as prolific and as successful as Star Trek is not going to have those. And so it's kind of like, all right, try it. And in a lot of ways, and I think the reason I wanted to say this out loud is that that mirrors the whole ethic of the Star Trek universe in the first place, is infinite diversity and infinite combinations, right? So we're going to try everything. We're not going to judge it until we see. So, and some of it's going to suck, you know. So it's like, I think that's okay to, but you know, and sometimes with some shows have like an entire couple of seasons where their whole writing staff, it's a new writing staff, and nobody likes the direction they take it, so they have to just try again, you know. So yeah, that's a hard one, you know. Do you get bitter about that? I mean, sometimes it's sort of like, oh, come on, you could have done it better. But yeah, I can't fault them for trying. And so, but anyway, it's a, you know, they're I think they also have to do what sells. So I think there's a certain aspect of saying we're going to bring back the first actor's name you ever loved and character's name that you ever loved in this show. And so, you know, hey, if he wants to, do it.
Yeah, you want to read some comments?
Yeah, sure. There's a little character sketching going on between Pseudo History and Sophie Green. Let's see. Christopher Lee played Saruman at 100. Really? Or Saruman, right?
Didn't know that.
Didn't know that. That's pretty intense. Picard is actually a Barge of the Dead storyline. Interesting. I'm going to check that out. Talking about Star Trek Picard, I imagine. So that I always thought that writing was some of the most up my alley, because it's so about psychology and character development. And of course, everybody's favorite, childhood trauma. But yeah, a character study, exactly. And that's so cool. All right, I might have to check that out. Barge of the Dead. All right, and what else? Wesley died in the flower garden. A traveler. My tribe, my people.
He's a traveler.
I'm a traveler.
Yeah.
I'm a traveler. A dream traveler. Soma, the dream traveler. That's me. So I have a soft spot for Wesley. I was glad to see him come back though in Picard. So I don't know if I would use the word died, but I do. Yeah, that was the sort of goodbye. But yeah, when he came back in Picard, I thought that was pretty nice.
He's in Prodigy too.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Got some more.
Yeah, Prodigy's good. Yeah. If you like Star Trek, you like Prodigy. Give it a chance. Yeah.
Who doesn't? Nicholas Meyer. Why doesn't Nicholas Meyer produce with Rick Myers? Name's not sure.
I don't know Rick Myers. Nicholas Meyer was the guy that did Wrath of Khan, right?
Sophie Green. I do not like many of the Abrams movies very much compared to the Next Generation movies. I think that's kind of a popular opinion. I think I agree with that.
Same here, yeah.
It's very. They were being creative again. I think they were trying something. It was just such a departure from the aesthetic.
I like them enough, to be honest.
Yeah,
I like the first one.
Shocking to the eyes.
I like the second one too. I know a lot of people don't, but it's not as exciting or as fun as the first one. And then the third one is really just. It's kind of hard to follow, and it's just not as good. But if you really pay attention, it is a fairly good story. It's just not a good ending.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. Rick Berman too old to produce anymore? Is that true? Were you saying?
Yeah, I don't know. Rick Berman is not producing anymore, though. He's
probably retired.
Being asked to work on Star Trek, and you know, yeah, I don't know why. that is.
I mean, you know, some people get to retirement age and they're just like, you know what, I'm done. I did love doing this, but I can't do it anymore.
He's probably retired. I mean,
So,
he's got to be like probably in his 80s or something.
Sometimes your needs change once you get to that point, and you know, like I have a lot of family who was in law, and I remember like there's one person who retired and just immediately stopped involvement in anything like that, and like started playing music with his son and smoking weed all the time, and then his ex-wife was one person who her retirement was very difficult. It was tricky for her. She had to figure out who she was without her work, and that's why a lot of lawyers, a lot of politicians, just they keep working until really old, because they're just like, why would I stop if I still can and I still want to?
But, sure, yeah, makes sense.
Maybe there's a just a little shift.
There's other stuff to do with your life.
Yeah. All right.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. We got any more comments here? First, you need a script. Instead of saving the whales, they save the dinosaurs. Yeah, and of course in Voyager we find out that the dinosaurs did go off to become an intelligent species.
There's a Rick and Morty episode about that too.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs come back and they're like, monkeys went bald? You guys were squirrels when we left. And the joke is that they're like virtue signalers. They're like super enlightened, and they're like, no one should ever need credit for their good deeds. And and Rick can't stand that shit.
Right.
It's like any virtue, and no one virtue signals this hard without something to hide.
And they are hiding something.
And then they're sort of, but they were unaware of it. So in their defense. But so that's another trope. Apparently, I didn't know it was a trope, but it happened twice. The dinosaurs are actually very enlightened. What do we learn from the dinosaurs?
Well, were they enlightened in Voyager? I don't really remember. They were intelligent, though, but I think they might have been sort of warrior-like. Not that you can't be enlightened and be a warrior, I guess.
Depends, I guess, on your,
Yeah.
If you're
what kind of warrior?
As Worf showed in his stint in Picard, if when I studied martial arts, I was always, throughout my life, I was always really a pacifist, really against violence. But when I did study karate a while, and I found that to be able to do that if I needed to made me more confident that I could avoid violence. And my sensei always used to say, the best, the mark of a good fighter is that they know when not to fight. Is that they refuse to fight. They know how to avoid it because they sense conflict. If you get good at fighting, that's conflict management. And if you get good at that, you're going to sense conflict before it becomes visible, and you're going to be able to avoid it.
Yeah.
So maybe a warrior, if that's your goal, maybe, and I believe that that's the direction Worf was going in on Picard, is that it's like what if understanding battle and conflict brings you to a non-conflicted place. And some would say the art of war, Sun Tzu, the Taoist text, Chinese, tries so hard to understand war and conflict that it ends up eliminating peace. So it's an interesting approach at writing. And so I think that's one thing that they're exploring in all the Star Treks is this warrior race. What is sacred to them? What is peace ever good? And what does that mean? What does all this stuff mean if you value conflict and passion and blood? So that's kind of interesting. But I don't know. Do we want to say? You want to say anything more about that?
No, go on. If you
I was just thinking that we're on another topic entirely. But that's cool.
Well, you reminded me of another evil twin.
Oh, good.
There's the Deep Space Nine episode where Bashir gets stuck being James Bond or whatever in the holodeck.
That's right.
And there's a Worf lookalike who is not a very nice guy. He's kind of like Odd Job or something. Well, he's like a gambler, but he's like a bad Bond villain. Mm-hmm. And the holodeck. It's like, did we even talk about holodeck?
Yeah,
twins.
Well, sort of in the Riker example, because he was the evil twin who was begot by the transporter accident.
Well, that's the transporter, not the holodeck.
Oh, that's true. But it's still okay. Wait, no, you're right. Completely different.
Yeah.
Why was I?
We didn't even talk about holodeck.
Holodecks. That's
There's
true.
tons of them. There's
but
a
of
whole
course,
episode.
these aren't twins though. These are them. But they're too wrapped up in their characters. They don't know that they're not their characters. So they're actually trying to kill Bashir. That's the problem, because it was involved the transporter.
Well, right,
because they couldn't.
It wasn't them. It was just that their images were being
their patterns.
Yeah, were being used instead of the holodeck character.
No. They were being beamed in, but their patterns, they couldn't assemble their patterns. But they needed to store them somewhere while they fixed the computer.
Right,
but
so
that's
they stored them in the holodeck.
That's so much data that they had to store it in the entire ship. So part of them was showing up in the holodeck.
Right.
And the entire station. And,
but it wasn't them though. I mean, he's still acting like the holodeck character.
Well, but if they die, then the people die.
Oh, right. I think they did say that. Yeah, it was a good episode.
It's their patterns. So it's like, but it's not their conscious part of them. So that's why they're still in character. They don't know that they're not this character, and they don't know that they don't really want to kill Bashir.
See, I don't remember.
Yeah, that one actually. That's a fantastic example of, because that's the extra mindfuck version where you're completely like your friends are trying to kill you because they don't remember they're your friends. You have to keep them alive, but you also can't die yourself.
Right.
Because the safeties are turned off. I mean, this was really good writing. To get you into a situation where all these things have to be true. They think they hate you. You have to protect them and yourself. Ooh, yeah, that's a good example, Lieutenant.
Yeah. Hey, so
gonna need a bigger ship. Good timing. I agree. That's a big idea. We're gonna need a bigger ship, Lieutenant.
Yeah. There are a lot of interesting twins and sort of half twins in Star Trek. We were talking about clones earlier, and I wanted to bring up how, in DS9 we have this early episode where it's established that it's a crime to kill a clone, even if it's a clone of yourself. But in the episode in TNG, what's it called? We have this episode where Riker finds out that he's been cloned by these people, and Dr. Pulaski as well, I think. And so they go down to the planet and they kill the clones. They vaporize them as they're growing in their pods or whatever.
At this dramatic point, I'm going to pause you so we can say goodbye to Sophie Green.
Oh, hey,
about to lose the satellite uplink here. Thank you so much. We'll definitely subscribe. Very good to hear. Thank you, Sophie.
Thanks. Yeah, please do.
And good to know that Star Trek fans are everywhere, including this young IDF officer. Well, Godspeed, be safe, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for being here. Yeah.
All right, pseudo history. Going to need a bigger ship. Yep, that was funny. That was very good. Good timing too. They fought the Vulcans and the Orions over Earth dilithium and lost. Oh yeah.
Who did?
That rings a bell, but I can't remember who. But yeah, feel free to chime in again on that one. Pseudo history.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so Shakespeare is a big part of Star Trek in a lot of ways, going back to the original series. In that Captain Garth episode, we have one of the other inmates in the insane asylum quoting Shakespeare, and this is hilarious. She's explaining that she's a poet, and Captain Garth is like, "Oh yeah, well, like recite one of your poems," and she recites some Shakespeare, and he's like, "You wrote that?" And she's like, "Yeah, I wrote it this morning in my notebook." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "And the fact that, somebody else wrote it hundreds of years before me doesn't change the fact that I wrote it." And yeah, it's just amazing stuff. It's like Pierre Menard, if anybody knows the story of Pierre Menard.
That's familiar, but I can't place it.
Borges has this story about this guy has just written Don Quixote, and he's really excited about how famous he's going to be for writing this amazing masterpiece. And yeah, he knows that it was already written hundreds of years ago by Cervantes, But what does that matter? You know, the fact that he's written it now is going to be seen as genius because people are going to say, you know, when Cervantes wrote this, he was just writing about the world around him. But when this guy wrote it now, he had to write about a world that's been gone for 100 years. So, you know, what a work of genius. Anyways,
it's another trope that Star Trek explores a lot. You know, I think because they like to draw on history. And I actually sort of have sometimes wondered if our friend Pseudo History here, who comments a lot, is maybe shares this passion. Maybe that's one of the reasons that brings you to Star Trek, is that they will take you back. I think that's one reason why they go back to the time travel theme so often, is that, like, let's just see how what we're doing on this show looks to various parts of history. And of course, the most popular is go back to the present time that it was made in, like oh man, which one is it where they save the whales? They have to go back to
Star Trek 4 in the 80s.
Yes, they have to go to mid-80s San Francisco because that's where they were. So that's the most fun one, and now they still did that in Discovery and Picard. We get to see people not too far from our time and how they react to the Star Trek people.
Texas. Rodenberry's from Texas. I just remembered.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's in exploring. I also just saw the Deep Space Nine episode where they go back. The Ferengi accidentally go back to 1947 Earth.
Right. Yeah.
And
Roswell.
And he's like, Roswell, New Mexico. And Quark is like, me and my family and a world full of primitive humans. I like those odds.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to completely screw up everything just because he can make a profit. That is, you know, and he's, you know, they make his character like sort of likable, but he's ruthless. And I mean, like, would we tolerate that from a real person? I don't think so.
Well, there's a great scene in that episode where Odo has gone back with them.
Yeah.
And he's been posing as a dog. I can't remember what kind of dog it is, but it's the same kind of dog.
Little Green Men, that's the episode.
Little Green Men, yeah.
Says Andy Lima in Pseudo History.
If you've ever seen the movie The Thing, where it's in the Arctic or whatever, and it's like a base where they're doing science, and there's the whole thing is that the Thing is a shape-shifting creature, and it poses as a dog. And so it's the same kind of dog that Odo poses as, and Quark doesn't know that it's Odo. And so at one point early on in the episode, they leave Quark in the room with the dog, and he says, "You're going to leave me in here with that thing?" And it's like, obviously a reference to the movie, you know, but I didn't catch it the first time. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool.
Trek's full of that kind of stuff.
I didn't catch that. I remember that line, but I did not catch that reference.
Let's see. Orions are green, kind of look like alligators. Yes, it was an Orion slave. Well, she wasn't a slave, but it was an Orion woman in the episode with Captain Garth, who's reciting Shakespeare, the lunatic. And she actually gets killed on screen in that episode. She gets blown up. You don't see her blow up, but you see her, and then boom, you see an explosion and smoke. And it's like, wow, that was one of the more violent deaths for Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, there every now and then you get to someone dying and you're sort of like, wait a minute, really? You guys are usually pretty easy on me here.
Yeah.
But you know but usually they sort of correct that. If they do go outside their normal comfort zone, they usually kind of correct it.
Well,
but
yeah, I mean,
the newer ones though, not so much. I think they're a little darker. They like to leave.
Well, I mean, in the old Star Trek, people would die and then like they would just still like make a joke and laugh, and that would be the end of the episode. Right. It's like they're not a little more upset about that.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it was sort of unrealistic. But in the new Star Trek, they kill a lot more people. People die like crazy. We always talk about Berto Prey 5 on this stream. He was one of the great Star Trek live streamers, and he did a body count for Star Trek Picard each season and found that it's just through the roof, the number of people that die on new Trek compared to old Trek, where you almost never see anybody die.
Right.
Even in Deep Space Nine. I mean, Deep Space Nine had like a whole war and everything, but even then, you just compared to new Trek, where they just mow people down.
There's a lot more war. There's a lot more ruthless invasions of stuff. And I feel like they were exploring some of that. They were exploring, like we were talking about the Klingons and the warrior race. What is it like when that's the whole culture? And then a little bit more, other enemies that are equally aggressive, but maybe less just plain bloodthirsty, like the Romulans. And then later we're exploring the Cardassians, and of course we're looking at the Cardassians through that lens of on Deep Space Nine. We're looking at it through the lens of the Bajoran occupation. So that's an interesting one. Like how do we understand our potential enemies?
Yeah.
And how do they seem to think that in Star Trek? And I do feel like the only thing that sort of gets me down sometimes about some of the Star Trek shows particularly is that sometimes the lesson seems a little too simple and cut and dry. Just the who's good and who's bad sometimes gets a little bit oversimplified. But I do really like the Romulans and the Cardassians as a races where you can explore what's animosity like, and who would actually aggress against us. Whom would we fear? Whom would we, because especially when we're trying to present the Federation as welcoming everybody, inclusive. So who are our enemies?
Yeah. Let's read some comments. You want to take them there?
All right. Where is Earth's dilithium? If you check, Earth is an importer of dilithium, says Pseudo History.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I did not know that either. But I think that they mostly mine it from other. Don't they mine it from other? Maybe the humans and the Federation import it, but maybe they. I feel like they mine it elsewhere. They don't.
Yeah, we definitely hear about them mining it, and there's a planet where they find a lot of it, and they really want to get it, and the planet's like, we don't really want you guys mining it here.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the episode where they introduced the Klingons, actually? Well, yeah. Anyways, dilithium crystals.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Come from other planets generally.
Pseudo History says I'm canon. So is that in reference to what I was saying about your history fascination too? Your canon, is that code for history? I like that.
Everybody has their own personal canon is something that I've kind of found being a Star Trek fan.
Mm-hmm.
Roddenberry had his own.
You got Pseudo History's support there. Boom.
Nice. Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Roddenberry at one point said that the third season of Star Trek was not canon, in his humble opinion. And as I was saying earlier, he didn't work on that season, and he was not really all that happy with how it turned out. I think it's actually pretty good. I know Leonard Nimoy did not really care for it either, but I think it's pretty good. It's kind of like Twin Peaks, the second season, where it's like, what? This isn't as good. But you still like it.
It just doesn't fit together as easily. I mean, it's definitely different. I think people once they get into a groove, they don't like that groove being interrupted and being forced to change.
Well, yeah, in the third season, it doesn't take itself as seriously. There are a lot more episodes where it's like, well, that's sort of dumb, and they just don't really have much of a profound point sometimes. Or if they do, it's just not made as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to bring it back a little bit to our original theme, because those are some of the moments where you're sort of like, all right, I see what you wanted to do. You could have written it better. Like how on Picard, for example, does everybody from the old show arrive back? And how do they get the old ship? Like, all right, we got to figure out how to do it. Because we want to film it.
We got to do it.
We have our fight scene. We have our final scene. We have our glory scene. We have our reunion. How do we make it happen? Yeah. How do we get Data to have aged, for example?
Yeah.
How do we get a robot who is dead twice to come back and be older.
Yeah.
You know, and so occasionally, and that's why it comes back to the trope that we're talking about today, which is the look-alike trope, the evil twin trope, or the just you look like someone I know, but you don't seem to know what they know, whether it's for nefarious reasons or just a mistake. And we're linking this back to Shakespeare. We have a lot more viewers on than earlier when we were saying this before. But Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors. Our Captain Haskin recently was in a production of Comedy of Errors, and it never stops being funny, and we seem to keep to juxtapose someone against someone that they looks just like someone they love but is not the same person. And Shakespeare could only write that as twins separated at birth, but now sci-fi has just boom exploded all the different ways you can have either someone talking to themselves or the same looks like two of the same person, or the same person talking to someone else that they love, but they are not the same person. They don't have the memories and all that stuff. So sometimes they write it badly, but it's kind of because it's usually so rewarding. You just kind of forgive them. I do, and I'm just kind of like, all right, fine, whatever. Your science talk was a little flimsy today, but now that we're here, let's have fun.
Yeah, and. Speaking of that, the Orville also kind of copied the Thomas Riker idea with the Kelly Grayson character getting a duplicate that I can't remember the details exactly. I think it's like a time travel thing. And so suddenly it's just like, yeah, there's another version of me walking around, and isn't it that she's like a year younger or something? And so she's like they're looking at each other like, wow, like the one is like, what happened to you? You got old and turned into like a loser, and the other one's like, wow, you were sort of an obnoxious idiot, weren't you? But they're both like still there, and
that's a good variation on the trope. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
past and future versions of yourself.
I'm probably getting that wrong, but it was something like that. Anyways, it's it's the same thing where the duplicate basically thinks, well, me and my old lover should be lovers again now or whatever. Just like Thomas Riker thought that Deanna Troi was going to jump for joy when she saw him. And then, well, it's just not quite that easy. Yeah. And so, but yeah, in the Orville, Seth MacFarlane does basically go for it with this other woman. And then it's just like, he feels really weird about it, and it's really awkward because the real one is still there.
Right. Yeah, someone's screwed.
Real one.
Yeah. Right. And there's actually no difference. Yeah, that is really one of the more interesting ones because there's no good solution to it. And I think that's why you have to bring the character back. What has he done with that bitterness? He's joined the Maquis.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Thomas Riker, they didn't really get back to him in Star Trek TNG when they were wrapping everything up in season 7. They just didn't have any good ideas. But, I got to tell you guys this, if you didn't know already. They actually loved Thomas Riker so much that they actually kicked around the idea of killing Will Riker and having Thomas Riker replace him. They thought when they were writing that episode, maybe Will should die, and this would shake up the show and really, pull people in. It's like, Will's gone, but the actor's still there, and this guy is a really interesting new character.
The next best thing.
But they vetoed that idea basically because they realized, look, we're planning to go and make all of these characters, the main characters in big movies, and if we tell you
it's too complicated.
Yeah, it's just not only is it too complicated for people watching the movies who haven't really seen the show, but it's also just like all of these other characters have all this history. They've been together for years, and now there's this guy.
So there'd be an interruption to that.
Yeah,
that messes it up.
That was the continuity. Main reason they didn't do it. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I can feel that already. Like, yeah, that is jerkier.
Yeah.
And I think that would become too much of a problem.
It would be a huge problem, constantly explaining things to this guy that everybody else knows,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just glad they didn't do it because it isn't really what you want. As interesting as Thomas Riker was, ultimately, he only got one more episode on Deep Space Nine, and
well, I think that it's a valuable lesson to say that, well, although we're on this show in the business of problems that can be solved and wrapped up in one episode, we do want to bring up the fact that if this actually were to happen, there would be no real solution, and that guy would be going around forever going, I never got mine.
Well, yeah, it's a really weird.
And so when are you going to have to come and reconcile with that?
Yeah.
Or reckon would be a better word.
Yeah, I reckon.
even though that's what it means. But so Earth is weak. I heard all right, pseudo history. Are you all right? Do you need to talk? Do you need a pillow? I heard the budget got slashed for TOS third season, says Andy Lim. You're right about that, I think.
Yeah, I remember hearing that too. I think that's true.
They did everything they could to stay alive, but they were losing limbs, that's for sure.
And I mean, maybe that's maybe. I mean, one of the things that stands out to me about the third season is that it's almost like Babe of the Week. Almost every episode, it's like there's some new, random like babe who's sort of mysteriously just there or something. It's like it's really kind of the same a lot. And then
leaning on that aspect of it too much.
And then she sort of throws herself at Kirk in one way or another, and it's just like this really is getting kind of old. It gets hard to take it seriously, and maybe though it was because the ratings weren't as good, and they were like, well, sex sells. But I don't know. It might have just been that the people that kind of took over when Rodenberry kind of took off just figured that it was a good idea.
Yeah, right. And then we go a little farther into some of this. Since we're off Trek, we were off the subject of Trek for a minute. Farscape had an excellent duplicate arc in season 3. Okay, I'm going to check that out. I've heard of it, have not actually checked it out. Have you checked out Farscape?
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
All right, season 3 duplicate arc. We're on it.
Okay.
Thanks for the tip, Andy Lim. Didn't that happen to Harry Kim? Oh, the older version of himself? I think it did. Isn't that right? Or maybe like the version that like they didn't. The Voyager was destroyed before they got back to Earth, and he's going back in time. Harry Kim was one of the few that survived, and he has survivor's guilt.
Yeah,
and he goes, and then he gets sent off on a mission,
saving them.
Yeah, thank you, Andy.
Right.
We're going to check that out. Yeah. But yeah, that's right.
I don't think that's the same one he's talking about, though. I'm not sure.
Maybe, yeah. And I feel like there might have been more than one version of where, or no, Harry Kim was talking somehow. Met the version of himself that never went on the Voyager.
Oh man, yeah, that rings a bell too.
Yeah, I think there's multiple ones where he confronts. No, he doesn't meet himself, but he gets put into that other timeline for some reason. And so he's like, and his girlfriend is there, and she's like, "What are you glad to see me?" He's like, "Well, yeah, but where's the ship?" And so that's a slightly different version, another variation.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and that reminds me of another variation of this trope that I wanted to talk about, which is not the person who looks like but is not your friend, but when it's a mixture of people that like when Tuvok and Neelix go through the transporter and get fused. So they needed a different actor.
Right.
He had to look different. He'd be neither of those two people, but everyone sort of knows how to deal with him because he feels familiar.
Right.
But it's also the juxtaposed elements of these two characters who normally don't get along.
What a great episode that was. So
that's a very brilliant exploration of a similar trope, but very different angle.
What do you think? Did Janeway do the right thing in that episode?
You have to remind me. That was during the pandemic. I was under a lot of stress.
So Neelix and Tuvok are mixed into one person, Tuvix, and they
the Vulcan and the very goofy, gregarious chef party host from Talaxi. What was his planet? Talaxia. He's a Talaxian.
Talix.
With his crazy mohawk and crazy whiskers. Yeah, he was a nut. So imagine him fusing with a Vulcan.
Well, yeah. So they're all like, we gotta figure out how to separate them. But then after a while, Tuvix is like, I'm happier as Tuvix than I ever was as Neelix or Tuvok. I want to stay Tuvix. And Janeway is like, oh, nah.
Oh, no, you didn't.
And she makes him rip him apart. And it's like, yeah. I mean, her logic is like, that's nice, Tuvix, but it's not fair to Tuvok, and it's not fair to Neelix. And I have an obligation to the two of them, and I can't just ignore that and forget about that. And so people say that she murdered Tuvix.
Right, that's right. Is that what you're talking about, Andy Lim? Deadlock? Is that the episode? Is that the name of that one? No, it's called Tuvix. The episode's called Tuvix. You must be talking about something else. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't remember Deadlock too well right now.
Janeway changed the timeline. Yeah, maybe. And that's interesting.
Okay, well, yeah, that's that one with Harry Kim going back in time or whatever.
Oh, that's it.
Right?
That's it. That's right. You're talking about
really. I can't remember exactly. It's not really like
Deadlock. Oh, is that it? Deadlock? Is that what Deadlock is? Is that the one?
Well, then what is the episode where somebody has like a brain parasite? Oh, that's Enterprise, and it's Archer. And so
I might not have gotten to that one yet.
Well, I won't give it away then. Yeah, but yeah, it's like a brain.
I'll be there soon.
Problem, which is like a temporal problem, and I won't give it away. Yeah.
I do also like. I mean, feel free to do it. Time is an illusion anyway. But that actually kind of reminds me of another variation on that. It's another one that's brief. It's only a moment of this look-alike. It's when Paul Stamets on Discovery is trapped in a time jump. He's jumping to different times, and he finds himself at different times of his own existence. And like, there's one where he's, been very badly wounded, and his partner, the doctor, is treating him, and he has to put him into a coma. And he's like, shh, no, just okay, go to sleep. And he's like, no, I have to tell you something. I need to get out of this time loop. And he's like, no, you're gonna be fine. But it's a different reason than he actually thinks and than actually really happened. And then one of the funniest moments on Discovery for me, Tig Notaro. This is how I discovered Tig Notaro, the comedian. The kind of deadpan female delivery who's, she always has this biting humor, and she basically plays herself on the show. But then she's the only one who, by what Stamets says, figures out that he's in a time jump.
Oh, yeah, right.
And she says, he's like, so just out of curiosity, what if I needed to create a time jump? If I did that to this, would that work? And she's like, yeah, as long as you da 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 da. Are you in a time loop, Lieutenant? He goes, no. What do you want? Why would you say that? He's like, no, I'm just messing with you, and lets him go. But is that what you're referring to? Pseudo history. Why can I not remember her name? I only remember Tig because her name is so memorable. But she's about the Prime Directive. Yeah, she's actually really good at it, even though she's also very cynical. And that's one of the cool things about her character. She's both disciplined and respectful at the same time as being a little cynical and irreverent.
I just saw her on some other show that came out a long time ago, and she was like the mom. And it was just like a real short scene, but I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, that wasn't the point of your comment. Pseudo history. She's all about the Prime Directive, except with the Borg. Something is up. Oh yeah, interesting. They never got to explore that. That would be an interesting thing to explore. But yeah, that show I think got nipped before it really went everywhere that it wanted to.
Well, I thought SNW was going to be over after this season, but now it's been picked up for a fourth season, is what I'm hearing. So.
Oh, wait, was there a third one?
No, it's coming out in a month or two.
Yeah, they made it a while back, but it got held up in production.
Well, yeah, right? It's finally been announced for sometime in early July, I think. So, and they're saying that, they're going to do a fourth season. I really thought that them taking this long to get the third one out was an indication that there was no fourth season in store. And
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
To be honest, like we still might not get it or something. Who knows the way things are nowadays?
Mm-hmm.
But they're saying that's the words that they are going to do a fourth season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I would like that to happen because I think that it's not. I don't like it as much as Discovery. I don't think they go quite as far into the concepts, but I still think it's. I kind of am sad that there's no, with that big delay. It's like there's no Star Trek shows on the air right now. So
Well, there aren't. Yeah.
even though that one is technically just on hiatus, but nothing's active.
Yeah, with Lower Decks and Prodigy canceled.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people aren't really excited about the other two shows that are supposed to happen, Starfleet Academy and this Ryza comedy. So, my feelings, I hope that SNW gets better, just like Lower Decks did. I think that there's a lot of great potential for SNW, but yeah, they got to hone in on it and I don't know, stop messing around.
So we have a question here that is a real nitpicking question. We love these kinds of questions. Are Borg examples of this evil twin look-alike trope? I'm gonna say it's a different trope. It's different enough that it's probing different questions. It's not just what would we do if faced with this situation. It's how would an entity get to this situation? It's like, what is it? The ultimate greed? Is it the ultimate control? How did it start out? Are they examples of twins? Yeah, I mean they're drones, which means they've lost their identity.
They
So
look enough
in
alike.
that way, they're kind of been reduced to the part of them that looks just like everybody else, but they're animated with a different. I don't think that there's deception going on usually.
No, yeah.
And I think it's just because they're so powerful that they don't have to be stealthy or be strategic. They just swallow you, So I'm gonna say it's different. I'm gonna nitpick and say it's different. It's the hive mind. I would say that's its own sci-fi trope.
Yeah, I was
which still goes to the question of what is the mind and
Sure.
what's human, what's unique.
I was watching an old TOS episode, The Changeling. I just put up to go out, I think tomorrow, a short where Spock is doing the mind meld with the Nomad robot that has been lost and then repaired and merged with some other alien probe or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so so Spock does this mind meld with it, and he finds out its origins and why it is what it is now. And he gets so wrapped up in basically stating its objectives to him. It's like, he's just like, we are Nomad, we must sterilize, and then eventually Kirk pulls him away, but he's still just like, we are Nomad, we must sterilize. And I realized, oh my gosh, it's like the first Borg assimilation.
Yeah.
It didn't mean to, and Kirk tells it like, you are in contact with the being Spock, disconnect or whatever. And it's like, okay. And then Spock is like slowly able to wake up out of it, but it's really just like being, connected to the hive mind. So
I have a response planned for this last question, but before we get to that, I'm just going to say that this is definitely another example, and there are a lot of more examples of where a person is becomes a different sort of character. And so I think that that is definitely another example, and I think, and so then I'm going to get to this question here. The characters in DS9, are they twins? Because actually, in some ways, I think, like I said earlier, that's my favorite example, which is the Changelings, because they're shapeshifters, because they can fool you. There's no way you can tell it apart unless you ask them the right question. And also, even though Star Trek touts everybody's self-discipline and emotional ability to back up from the emotion of something. We have lots of people letting their emotions get in the way of them. Like, you test me, you don't believe that I'm not a changeling. It's like, dude, what don't you understand about an unprecedented threat? Like, we have to figure this.
They have the blood test, but that gets they can fake that.
They find ways to fake it, right? Exactly. But that, I would say, is definitely and also it's the big bad. It's the most scary example of that. Beings that you don't even recognize as anything like your own life form. They're liquid. Yeah. They are. It's impossible to know what their real appearance is. You can't associate them with an appearance. It's really, really scary in that way. And they seem almost amoral, but definitely there's some kind of revenge, because they definitely feel wronged by humanoids, right? And so, but you never really understand why are they so bitter? They're just so aggressive that all you can do is be on your guard against them. So in a way, I would say that's the characters from DS9 that are the best example. And it becomes, they squeeze a lot of story out of that, because the whole Starfleet has been infiltrated by changelings, and that is a scary prospect. Wait a minute, I talked to them just last couple of weeks. Like, what do you mean they've been taken over?
Yeah.
Nope, that was a... And Discovery does it with, sorry, I'm jumping a bit. Discovery does it with the Control.
Sure, yeah.
And because you have to figure out that this person that Burnham's old war buddy or academy buddy was actually Control. Mm-hmm. And Spock, of course, lets her know that, and says it in his nice, quick, efficient manner. So yeah, these are. Is liquid space a twin universe? And the says liquid history. I mean, says,
liquid space.
Liquid history. Sorry, pseudo history. Liquid space. Yeah, I would call it just another universe. I don't know if it's twin, right?
The liquid, yeah. What?
Or is it a dimension? Or is it a universe? Do they call it a different universe?
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing. It used to be that we had the mirror universe, and it seemed like that was the only other one. But then we pretty firmly established there's a multitude of, mirror universes. So, yeah, I don't know. Good question, though. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we might have to call it a stream before too long, though.
Yeah.
Let everybody get some sleep here. But
yeah. So. Just thinking about what would you do? Yeah. What would you do if you were talking to someone that you knew and loved and trusted, and they were showing signs of not being trustworthy or not being even the same person? That's a pretty intense thing to imagine. But I think we also, in a lot of ways, it's not a literal fable. I think it's a metaphor, because that happens. It's relatable, isn't it? Like sometimes. Dude, what happened to you? You used to be so whatever, why are you so fixated on blank? So I think, maybe there's sometimes when you catch up with people you haven't talked to in a long time, it's sort of like, or in all kinds of ways. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that might happen. So anyway, just want to make it a little extra heavy.
Yeah, it's all about identity, I mean, how important is it to you to be the only you, and to...
That's another question, another layer of it, right?
Keep that, something that you have priority over. Maybe some people wouldn't really mind if there was somebody impersonating them out there. In real life, we have people who look enough like some celebrity that they go around, getting chicks that way or whatever. But, they have some music to face maybe at some point with that. There was some celebrity who put out a message saying, like, yeah, there's somebody going around doing this. It's not me, don't be a fool.
Right. And of course now we have AI, so now we actually have that problem. We actually literally have that problem. But we're not talking about, I saw you in the flesh and I talked to you, so I thought it was you. It's, I saw your likeness. And then you have to have people like Taylor Swift going, that was not me. everybody, please
Right.
don't make any assumptions.
Well, I saw this one thing. It was like, hi, this is the real Johnny Depp, and I know that a lot of people have been communicating with people who aren't really me. So if you want to communicate with the real me, here's the link. I was like, wait, what?
Right, and what, isn't that what a clone would say?
Yeah.
Speaking of sci-fi tropes, relatable sci-fi tropes.
It's so sad to think of people thinking that they have a really like close relationship with Johnny Depp, and they're just like talking to AI and giving their money away. But yeah, give us your money, people. We would love to have your money. We are not AI, but we could give it to an AI. We're going to be doing
We could use
this.
your support, and we are very grateful for your presence here tonight, because we really need to create community and reach out and connect with everybody here, and that's what we like about this forum on Star Trek Nitpickers. So, until next time, I'm Soma the Traveler, and this is Lieutenant William, and this is Star Trek Nitpickers. So we're so glad you've come. See you next time, everybody.
Yeah, we'll be here on Sundays. Maybe not every Sunday, but we'll try to be kind of consistent. We'll try to start putting out those things that say that we're going to be on when we're going to be on. And we would love to have you guys come back and comment and, give us ideas. So, till then, everybody, live long and prosper.
All right, everybody.
Kapla.
Kapla.
Thanks.